Let's start with the myth that being private means you're hiding something. It doesn't. It means you're protecting something. There's a quiet strength in keeping parts of your life to yourself. In a world where oversharing has become the norm, privacy has almost become suspicious. People say things like, you never talk about your struggles, or you're so guarded. But here's the truth. Privacy is not about being closed off. It's about being conscious. It's about creating a boundary between what is sacred and what is public. It's the act of saying, this part of me is still tender, still unfolding, still healing, and I don't owe it to anyone to expose it before it's ready. We often confuse openness with connection. We think that if we tell everyone everything, we'll be understood, seen, and validated. But not all ears are safe. Not all listeners are gentle. And not every person has the emotional capacity to carry your truth with care. When you overshare in hopes of finding connection, what you often find instead is disappointment because the wrong people won't honor what it took for you to open up. Emotional safety is knowing who's earned the right to your story. It's not about shutting people out, it's about letting the right people in. It's recognizing that vulnerability needs to be held in trustworthy hands, not broadcast to unfiltered audiences. It's not fear that makes you private. It's discernment. It's maturity. It's love for yourself. And let's be honest, some parts of your life aren't even fully understood by you yet. Why hand them off to someone else prematurely? Privacy gives you room to process, to evolve, and to define your own narrative before it's touched by outside opinions. So no, you're not being cold. You're being careful. You're not being mysterious to confuse others. You're being quiet to protect your peace. You're not keeping secrets. You're creating space. And in that space, you are giving yourself something rare and beautiful. The dignity of being your own safe place. Keep some parts of you just for you, not because they're shameful, but because they're sacred. There's a hard truth most of us eventually learn. Not everyone listens to understand. Some listen to gather, to collect, to memorize your fears, to observe your weaknesses, and not with compassion, but with calculation. The more some people know about your emotional patterns, your childhood wounds, your dreams, or your insecurities, the more power they feel they have over you. They may not do it with overt malice, but it shows up in subtle and damaging ways. Throwing your past in your face during an argument, twisting your words when you're most vulnerable, or reminding you of your worst fears when you're trying to take a brave step forward. This is the type of manipulation that doesn't feel like abuse at first. It feels like concern. It feels like I just want to help, or I know you better than you know yourself. But when someone uses what they know about you to keep you small, to keep you uncertain, or to keep you emotionally dependent on them, that's not love, that's control. You might start second guessing yourself. You might start shrinking. You might think they're right. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I do need their approval to move forward. And that's how confusion creeps in. That's how your story no longer feels like your own. When you give too much of your inner world to someone who lacks empathy or maturity, you invite them into rooms of your mind that they don't know how to enter gently. They barge in, they rearrange things, they label you with your lowest moments, they hold your pain against you like it's evidence of weakness. And here's the painful irony. Often it's the people closest to us, the ones we thought we could trust, who do this. not always out of cruelty, but out of their own unhealed wounds, out of their need for superiority, out of fear that your growth might distance you from them. That's why boundaries are so crucial. That's why being discerning with what you share is not cold, it's wise. It's not about building walls, it's about reinforcing your emotional home. You can let people in, yes, but not all the way. Not into the places they can't respect, not into the spaces they'll use against you when they feel threatened by your strength. Remember, people who truly care about you won't use what they know to control you. They'll use it to protect you, support you, and remind you of who you are, not what you fear. Trust is sacred. And once it's broken, it takes time, effort, and humility to rebuild. Be slow to open up. Be careful with your wounds. They are not weapons, but in the wrong hands, they'll be turned into them. There's a quiet kind of power that comes from being intentional with what you reveal. In an age where sharing everything has become the norm, where people perform their pain, display their healing, and narrate every step of their lives, what's often forgotten is this: the more you expose, the more you allow others to define you. You don't have to explain yourself to be understood. You don't have to prove your worth by narrating your journey in real time. You don't need to broadcast your growth to validate that it's happening. In fact, the most meaningful transformations usually happen in silence, in spaces too sacred to be reduced to captions, confessions, or content. Overexposure weakens your spiritual immune system. The more people know, the more noise they create, and the more noise you absorb, the less room you have for your own voice. You begin to second guess your choices. You start to edit yourself before you even speak. You perform instead of exist. You hustle for validation instead of living in truth. There's power in mystery, in holding some parts of yourself sacred, in allowing others to witness the fruit of your growth after the work has been done, not while your roots are still tender and growing. Every time you prematurely reveal a dream, a plan, a healing wound, or a fragile truth to the wrong audience, you risk letting it be shaped by opinions that were never meant to influence you. It's not about being fake. It's not about building a false image or living in secrecy. It's about understanding that your energy is a currency, and when you constantly spend it trying to be known, you leave yourself emotionally bankrupt. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table of your becoming. Some people only come to watch, not to support. Some listen, not to understand, but to compare, to critique, or to compete. And let's be honest, some things lose their magic when spoken too soon. Some dreams need to incubate in the dark before they're exposed to the light. Some ideas need to remain whispered between you and God, or between you and your journal, until they're strong enough to stand on their own. When you share too much too fast, you risk giving away not just your story, but your stability. You don't need to be known to be whole. You don't need to be constantly seen to be powerful. Sometimes the most impactful people are the quiet ones. The ones who don't say much, but when they do, it matters. The ones who don't reveal everything, but carry themselves with such alignment that you feel their authenticity without needing an explanation. So reclaim your power by pulling back your energy, by being selective, by letting your actions, your consistency, and your peace speak louder than your need to be understood. When you guard your spirit with intention, you don't just protect yourself, you become magnetic. You become someone who doesn't beg to be seen. because you've already seen yourself. There comes a point in your growth where you realize you don't need a committee to co-sign your evolution. You don't need a panel of friends, family, or followers to approve your decisions. Your life is not a group project. You are not here to be voted on. You are not a community draft. You are a single soul with a sacred path, and not everyone will understand, accept, or even support it. That's okay. That's not your problem to fix. We've been conditioned to believe that inclusion is security, that the more people we involve, the more valid our choices become. So we ask everyone for their thoughts. We crowdsource our next steps. We poll our circle before we move. But that's not self-trust. That's dependency dressed as collaboration. And it costs you something deep, your clarity. The more people you invite into your process, the more diluted your voice becomes. The more conflicting feedback you gather, the more lost you feel in your own story. Suddenly, what was once a clear vision turns into a tangled mess of what ifs and maybe they're right. You get paralyzed by possibility. You lose touch with your own intuition. You become a project, not a person, but healing, evolving, dreaming. It's not a democracy. It's sacred, solo work. The kind of work that asks you to go inward, not outward. The kind that teaches you how to sit in your own silence, trust your gut, and live with decisions that only you will fully understand. And let's be honest, most people aren't giving advice based on what's best for you. They're giving advice based on what they would do, based on their fears, their limitations, and their comfort zones. What feels reckless to them might be the most aligned decision of your life. What looks safe to them might be the most dangerous thing for your growth. It takes courage to say, I hear you, but I'm still choosing me. It takes maturity to stop explaining your every move just to ease someone else's discomfort. You don't need to be understood to be right with yourself. You don't need everyone clapping to know that you're on the right stage. And if your silence offends them, if your independence makes them uncomfortable, let it. That's not your burden to carry. You were not born to please, you were born to live. So stop handing out backstage passes to people who've never performed a single scene in your journey. Stop asking for directions from those who've never walked your path. And most of all, stop editing your life down to something more palatable just to avoid someone else's judgment. This is your story, your chapters, your ink, your pen. Live it as though it were never meant to be co-written. One of the hardest, most humbling lessons you'll ever learn is this. Not everyone who smiles at you is safe for your soul. Not everyone who listens deserves your story. Not every relationship is a safe place to land. Vulnerability is sacred. It's not just about being real or open. It's about sharing the tender, unfinished parts of your life with someone who has the capacity to hold them without judgment, ego, or agenda. That kind of space is rare. That kind of safety isn't found everywhere. Some people aren't containers, they're sieves. They leak. They take what you've shared in confidence and slowly let it drip into other conversations, laced with their interpretation, flavored with their bias. They call it just talking, but it's betrayal disguised as small talk. Some people aren't containers, they're mirrors, not the good kind, the kind that reflects back your wounds and distorted ways, the kind that twists your vulnerability into something shameful. You share a piece of your past and they respond with pity or comparison, or worse, use it against you later in moments of conflict. That's not empathy, that's emotional immaturity wearing a kind face. And some people, they aren't containers. They're competitors. They collect your struggles like ammunition. The more you tell them, the more they use your honesty to elevate themselves. They make subtle jabs. They try to one-up your pain. They offer performative concern while silently feeding off the details of your suffering. They don't want connection. They want control. You see, not everyone has done the work. Not everyone has sat with their own story long enough to honor yours. If someone hasn't learned how to hold their own emotions with care, how could they possibly hold yours? That's why boundaries matter. That's why discernment is not cruelty, it's compassion for your own spirit. You get to ask, has this person earned the right to know me at this depth? You get to protect your softness. You get to vet who touches your truth. Because once your story leaves your mouth, it's no longer just a moment. It's in their hands. And how they hold it tells you everything you need to know. Being guarded isn't a flaw. It's a scar turned boundary. It's wisdom learned through pain. It's your nervous system finally recognizing safety not as a feeling, but as a pattern. You're not too private. You're precise. You're not cold. You're careful. And when you do find that rare person who listens without fixing, hears without judging, holds without dropping, you'll know. Because their presence won't make you shrink. It'll help you breathe deeper. That's what safety feels like. And until you find that, you're allowed to remain wrapped in your own protection. You don't owe access to anyone just because they ask nicely. Not everyone is a safe container, and not everyone should be. Let's start here. You were not born to be on high alert all the time. You weren't made to be everyone's emotional dumping ground, nor their favorite secret, nor their easy target. You were created to breathe, to rest, to live freely, and yes, to love deeply. That is the essence of a soft life. A life filled with inner peace, emotional safety, and connections rooted in mutual respect. But here's the truth most people forget. You can't have a soft life without sharp boundaries. Boundaries are not barriers, they are protectors. They don't block love, they guard it. They don't isolate you, they clarify who gets access and on what terms. Think of a boundary as a quiet, powerful sentence. This is where I end and you begin. You see, softness without boundaries is self-abandonment. It's giving so much that you forget yourself. It's allowing your kindness to be mistaken for availability, your patience to be mistaken for permission, and your presence to be taken for granted. Sharp boundaries are not unkind, they're necessary. They say, I can love you and still say no. I can care for you and still choose myself. I can forgive you, but I don't have to keep handing you chances. That is softness rooted in strength. That is grace backed by discernment. People will test you, not always out of malice, sometimes out of habit. They will push, they will prod, they will ask for more than you should give. And when you finally draw that line, when you speak up, pull back, or say, I'm not available for this anymore, they might call you difficult, or cold, or selfish. Because the moment you start prioritizing your peace, the people who once benefited from your lack of boundaries will feel uncomfortable. That's not a sign you're wrong. It's proof you're finally healing. You deserve a life where you don't have to explain your no. A life where your silence isn't guilt-driven, it's peace-chosen. A life where you don't feel obligated to tell your whole story just to be respected. You deserve a life where your emotional home is not wide open to every stranger who knocks. And yes, you can still be soft, you can still be nurturing, compassionate, and kind, but now your softness will be intentional, not automatic. It will flow where it's safe, not where it's demanded. You'll give from a place of fullness, not fear. This is what it means to be grounded, to be at peace without being passive, to be warm without being walked on, to glow gently and fiercely at the same time. So yes, you deserve a soft life, but that life begins the moment you say, my peace is not up for negotiation, and you mean it. There is undeniable strength and restraint in a world that encourages you to bear it all, to speak quickly, to prove constantly. There is quiet power in pulling back and knowing that your story is not for public consumption, it's for personal alignment. You are not required to hand your heart to people who haven't earned the right to hold it. You don't owe anyone full access to your thoughts, your pain, your dreams, or your healing. What you choose to keep sacred is not a secret. It's a boundary. It's a way of protecting the most vulnerable parts of yourself while they still learn how to stand. You've learned that some people listen to use, not to understand, that not everyone is a safe container, that overexposure doesn't make you real, it often makes you fragmented. You've come to understand that your life is yours to design, not explain, that you can be soft and still say no, that you can be kind and still be private, that boundaries are not walls, they are declarations of self-worth. Let the world wonder. Let them sit with their curiosity. You don't have to be understood to be at peace. You don't have to be fully seen to be fully valid. You don't have to prove your growth to anyone who wasn't there when it hurt. In fact, the most powerful thing you'll ever do is stop giving away so much of yourself just to feel accepted. Because once you anchor into your own truth, once you trust yourself enough to protect your energy, your silence becomes a sanctuary and not a single person can shake that. So walk gently, speak selectively, and protect your soul like it's priceless, because it is. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be whole on your own terms.